Before you even start dirt biking, you need to know what kind of riding will you be doing. So for example, are you going to be just casually riding around your property, out on the trails, or just free riding for fun, maybe on the farm? Or do you need a dirt bike that is street legal so that you can ride on the highway and ride some trails or gravel roads? If you need a dirt bike that's street legal, then you need to look at the dual sport bikes. They range from like 125cc all the way up to like 650cc, and then above that it's the heavier adventure bikes, which I don't recommend if you're a beginner. And I have another video on the best dual sport bike. There's a link to that video in the description below. But if you just want to ride for fun, be a casual weekend trail rider, maybe out on your property, then you need to start out on a trail bike. Now, just some quick differences between a trail bike and a dual sport bike. They're actually pretty similar, but the weight and the overall handling is going to be a lot better on the trail bike if you're riding trails, because they're lighter, they're a lot easier to lean and turn and ride at slower speeds, where the dual sport bike is a little bit heavier, a little more stable, better for riding on gravel roads or high speed on the highway. Plus, the dual sport bike has DOT tires, where the trail bike has more aggressive knobby tires, just better traction for riding in the dirt. So if you don't need to ride on the street, don't get a dual sport bike. Now you may be asking, Kelly, you didn't mention enduro or motocross bikes, which they're essentially race bikes. Yeah, I didn't, because I don't recommend them if you are a beginner. Race bikes, based on my experience, are really fun to ride because they got a lot of power. But when it comes to beginners and learning how to ride, building your confidence, staying safe, which is what this beginner series is all about, these race bikes are not beginner friendly. For one, the power is snappy. It's not forgiving. So you give it gas, and even if you have good throttle control, it's really easy to lose control, wheelie, and fly off the course if you're still learning how to use the clutch and the throttle and proper body position. And two, the suspension is extra stiff compared to a beginner-friendly trail bike. This stiff suspension is really nice for racing, but if you're just starting out, riding at low speeds and trail riding, it's a lot harsher. So when you go over bumps and obstacles, it's not going to compress as much, and this means you're going to feel it in your hands and arms, which will lead to you getting exhausted more quickly. And when you get exhausted more quickly, you're a lot more likely to lose control because you're hanging on tight, you're trying to control the throttle, and it's just really hard to hang on. And if you're riding low speeds, and especially if you're following a kid on a little trail bike, maybe your son or daughter, it's really hard to have control of a race bike because you give it throttle and whap, it really wants to jump out from under you. It's just not very friendly at low speeds, and it's actually a lot more likely to overheat because they need more air circulating past the radiators and engine to keep them cool. So you're a lot more likely to overheat, and coolant's going to come spewing out, it's going to come steaming, and you're going to have to stop the engine, or you're going to have to ride faster, which isn't really practical if you're trying to ride with your kid that's just starting out. And if you're trying to stay on a budget and you want to ride as much as possible and not work on the bike, race bikes generally require a lot more maintenance because they're higher performance. And when you have high performance, you're going to have to do generally a little bit more maintenance as far as oil changes, air filter, to keep the bike staying reliable. And the engines generally don't last quite as long as far as doing rebuilds go. And rebuilds can cost a lot of money, especially if you're not doing them yourself, where if you're just casually riding a trail bike, you rarely have to do a rebuild. And then when you go and try and sell your race bike, they're generally harder to sell because it's a lot more of a smaller niche group of people that want them. So you're probably going to lose money when you go and sell it, even if it's just a year later. Whereas a trail bike, they typically keep their value for a lot longer because they don't update the technology as often as a race bike. So you could buy a trail bike this year and then sell it 3 years from now for probably around the same price, as long as the market stays the same or similar. So does this mean you should choose a 4-stroke or a 2-stroke? Well, subscribe and see tomorrow to learn which you should buy if you are a beginner. And if you're finding this helpful, please share it with a friend or family member that wants to get started dirt biking safely and on a budget. I'm Kelly Fager from Motocross Hideout. Learn more, ride more.